At the start of the drama, we see a girl standing on the roof of her house, ready to jump. Just then, she receives a call from someone speaking to her in a very harsh manner. She speaks to that person while crying. On the other side, we see a little girl searching for her dad. She happens to see the girl jump off the roof. Later, we learn that the girl was the little girl's mother. Next, it is shown that the little girl has grown up and wakes up frightened from the same dream. This is the female lead, Shu Nian, who cannot speak. As soon as she wakes up, her eyes fall on a newspaper that says, "CEO's wife attempts suicide." In the next scene, Shu Nian's stepmother comes to meet her. She tells Shu Nian, "Your father's company is facing a financial crisis, forcing him to sell some shares, and as a result, your mother's school is also being sold." Shu Nian, using her sign language, says, "The school cannot be sold because it belongs to my mother, and my father has no right over it. I will never let it be sold." The stepmother replies, "If you don't believe me, come with me and talk to your father yourself. Anyway, it's been a long time since you last met him." Shu Nian agrees to go with her. As soon as she sits in the car, the stepmother's bodyguard sees her and make her unconscious before taking her to another location. In the next scene, Shu Nian is placed on a bed in a room. When she regains consciousness, she is shocked to find herself in a bedroom. She overhears a conversation between her stepmother and Mr. Zaho. The stepmother says, "Look, I've fulfilled my promise. Now you must invest in our company." She adds, "Enjoy yourself in the bedroom because my daughter won't be able to scream, and you can treat her however you like." Then she laughs. When Mr. Zaho enters the room, no one is there. He goes out to search for Shu Nian, but she had already hidden herself in the wardrobe. She tries to escape but is spotted by a guard. Meanwhile, we see the male lead, Ming. A waiter drugs his food under the instructions of his uncle. The plan is to send a girl to Ming's room, but the girl arrives late. Due to the drug, Ming begins to feel unwell. At the same time, Shu Nian, running from the guards, ends up being mistakenly sent to Ming's room by the waiter, who assumes she is a prostitute. The waiter locks the room from outside. Ming asks her, "What are you doing here?" Shu Nian types on her phone, "I'm being chased. Please help me." Ming tells her, "Leave." Shu Nian refuses to go for her safety. Ming angrily says, "Get out of here. Didn't you understand?" At that moment, the drug starts to take effect, and Ming becomes attracted to Shu Nian upon seeing her body. He tries to lift her onto the bed and forcibly kiss her. This scene is being recorded by a drone camera. Shu Nian bites Ming's hand, causing it to bleed. Seeing the blood, Ming faints, and Shu Nian escapes from the room. In the next scene, a reporter is explaining, this group is joining their company's CEO, who is Ming. At that moment, Ming steps out of the car. Then Ming enters the office, sits in the meeting room, and tells everyone, "These documents are for checking. I can forgive all the mistakes made in the past. I am confident that you will make a good decision." After the meeting ends, Ming leaves. Following this, Hong, who is Ming's uncle, becomes very angry and says, "This kid is trying to beat me." Then he calls a girl and asks her, "Did you do the work I told you to? Did you investigate Ming? Because now the time has come to teach him a lesson." In the next scene, we see Shu Nian returning home, where her dad and stepmom are sitting. At that moment, Shu Nian removes one of her shoes and hits her stepmom with it. Her dad, angry, says to her, "Have you gone mad? She is your mom." In response, she uses sign language to say, "This crazy woman had me kidnapped and thrown onto someone's bed. I barely escaped with my life." Then Shu Nian starts to strangle her stepmom. Her dad intervenes and pulls her away. Her stepmom says, "I didn't do anything. I just took you to meet Mr. Zhao." After this, Shu Nian's dad tells her, "She is your stepmom. She wouldn't hurt you." To this, Shu Nian says, "If you don't want to trust me, check the CCTV footage of the hotel." He scolds her and says, "I have to go to the office now. I'm going to be very busy. I'll deal with you when I get back." Then Shu Nian says, "I am fine, but why are you selling my mother's school? I will not let you do this." To this, her father angrily replies, "Don't mention that shameful woman's name in front of me." Shu Nian responds, "Shameful is not my mother. It's this woman." Her father becomes very angry, slaps her and says, "Leave." On the other side, we see Ming's assistant telling him, "That day at the hotel, your Uncle Hong planned to mix something in your food. After that, he also sent a girl to your room." He shows a picture of the girl, but Ming says, "This is not the girl who came to my room. Investigate properly." Hearing this, the assistant leaves. The next day, Shu Nian's father asks Miss Li, "What is Shu Nian talking about?" She pretends to be innocent and says, "How would I know? I can't do something like that to her." Angry, he asks, "Tell me the truth." At this, she starts seducing him, pulls him close and says, "Mr. Zhao likes Shu Nian. He told me that if he gets Shu Nian, he will invest in our company. Enraged, her father says, "You were trying to sell my daughter?" She replies, "No, but think about it yourself. Who else will like her?" She is mute. In such a case, Mr. Zhao liking her is a good thing. Just then, Xu Nian's stepsister arrives and shows them pictures of Xu Nian and Ming, which have gone viral on social media. Miss Li tells Xu Nian's father, "See, I told you Xu Nian is not innocent at all. She is just like her mother." In the next scene, Ming's uncle tells him, "Your reputation has been ruined, and you've become a playboy. Resign from the CEO position because your pictures with that shameful girl have gone viral." Ming replies, "But who said she is shameful? She is my fiancé. I kept this relationship a secret, but now that everything is exposed, I will hold a press conference today and clarify everything to the reporters." Later, Ming's assistant gives him all the information about Xu Nian. He informs Ming, Xu Nian's mother committed suicide in her childhood, and Xu Nian cannot speak. On the other side, Xu Nian's stepmother insults her at home, saying, "You had your eyes on Ming. You are as shameful as your mother." Xu Nian replies, "You kicked my mother out of the house. I know everything. Shameful is not my mother. It's you." Her stepmother devises another plan, drugs Xu Nian, and forces her into a car to take her away. Ming sees this and starts chasing the car. Miss Li hands Xu Nian over to Mr. Zhao, who tries to assault her in his car. Xu Nian kicks him, escapes from the car, and runs away. Ming rescues her and takes her to his home. He gives her a marriage contract and says, "Help me because the media is portraying me as a playboy. I want a fake engagement with you. I'll pay you for this. And if you work overtime, you'll get triple the salary." Xu Nian says, "But why is there a need for engagement? I can help you by giving a statement in the conference." Ming replies, "This way no one will suspect me, and I can also avoid marriage for some time. Don't worry. This contract ensures that there will be no physical relationship between us." Xu Nian then receives a message and leaves without saying anything. She goes to her mother's school, where all the teachers are very sad. Xu Nian says, "Don't be sad. I promise I won't let this school be sold." Afterward, she returns to Ming and says, "I am ready to sign your contract." Ming hands her the contract. Xu Nian then says, "But I have one condition. You will buy my mom's school so that my dad can't sell it to anyone else." Ming initially refuses, but Xu Nian tries to seduce him and gets closer. He tells her, "Stop," and agrees. He then says, "Don't come so close to me. Stay away. Once our contract expires, I will transfer the school to your name. For now, your work will earn you points. If you want the school, you'll need to complete 100 points." Ming asks her to read the contract. Looking at it, Xu Nian says, "Yesterday, you said you'd give me a high salary, but now you want me to work 24 hours. Ming responds, "If you have a problem with the contract, don't sign it. I also have the option of using AI to replace your face with someone else's and clear my image." Xu Nian says, "But I'm the original, and nothing can compare to the original." Ming agrees to the high salary and says, "From now on, you're my fiancé. You'll stay close to me in front of others, but when we're alone, you're not allowed to come near me because I don't like anyone getting close to me." Xu Nian asks, "When no one is around, will I get a break?" Ming replies, "No, you'll be available to me 24 hours a day. Don't make any sounds or gestures that I can't understand. You'll need to write down everything you want to say. If I get irritated with you, your points will be deducted." Xu Nian agrees to all these conditions. Before she leaves, Ming tells her, "You'll now live in my house, but you're not allowed in my room." In the next scene, Ming is smiling while thinking about Xu Nian. Just then, he gets a call from his grandfather, and at the same time, Xu Nian knocks on his door. Ming deliberately behaves rudely and says, "I already told you that you're not allowed in my room." Xu Nian replies, "I'm going to the school to get my luggage. I don't have any clothes to change into." Ming says, "You don't need to go anywhere. I'll arrange your clothes," and locks the door. In the next scene, Ming messages Xu Nian, informing her, "Tomorrow we have to attend a family dinner. My assistant will explain everything to you." Xu Nian gets irritated and says, "Engagement was fine, but now I have to act in front of his family too." They both go to meet Ming's grandfather. After meeting Xu Nian, the grandfather asks to speak with Ming alone. Ming tells Xu Nian, "I'll be back shortly. Behave well with my family. If there's any mistake, I'll deduct your points and sell the school tomorrow itself." Ming's grandfather tells him, "You know whose daughter this is, right? She is our competitor's daughter, and you got engaged to her." To this, Ming replies, "I've kept her only for my own benefit." Once she's of no use to me, I'll leave her. Hearing this, his grandfather praises him, saying, I'm pleased that you put your emotions aside and thought about the company first. Now, I'm convinced that the training I gave you hasn't gone to waste. Just then, Hong arrives and says to Ming, do you know you're getting involved with your father's girlfriend's daughter? Ming responds, I'm the CEO of the company, and I know what I'm doing. Saying this, he leaves. Meanwhile, two women are talking to each other. One of them says, this girl can't even speak. I don't know what Ming saw in her. At that moment, Zhu Nian writes to the women, I'm Ming's first love. He wants to have fun with me every night. After this, Ming silences her, saying she's joking, and warns Zhu Nian, you shouldn't spread rumors about me. Later, at the dining table, Ming says to her, serve me food from your plate and I'll give you 5 points. She replies, I want 10 points. Ming agrees. Zhu Nian deliberately serves fish from her plate. At this, Hong reminds Ming, you're allergic to fish, aren't you? Ming replies, it's fine, I can eat one. Then he deducts her 10 points. Seeing this, Zhu Nian thinks, I don't think I'll ever be able to earn full points. Elsewhere, Zhu Nian's stepsister shows her mother some pictures, saying, look, Zhu Nian and Ming are going to a press conference together. After this, her stepmother angrily says, like mother, like daughter. She spent the night with Ming. I will never let her marry into this family. She already hates us so much, and if she gains power, she will never spare us. At that moment, her stepsister says, I will separate them and seduce Ming. To this, her mother replies, that's quite a risky task. She responds, can I seduce a guy? Don't you even have that much faith in me, Mom? In the next scene, we see Zhu Nian getting a touch-up done for the conference. Meanwhile, some girls there comment, what did Ming see in her? You're not even that pretty, and you're mute and deaf too. This makes Zhu Nian very angry, and she types on her phone, I'm only mute. I can hear everything. Just then, Ming arrives and takes Zhu Nian with him. In the next scene, we see Zhu Nian's stepsister arriving at the conference to seduce Ming. Ming says to her, I don't think I invited anyone from your family here. She then tells Ming, Zhu Nian has had affairs with many guys and I can prove it. She tries to get close to Ming, but he moves away from her, and her plan fails. Ming and Zhu Nian then go to the press conference together. There, Ming says, I had kept my relationship with Zhu Nian a secret, but the media has spread so many rumors about us that I had to reveal our relationship publicly. Suddenly, everyone's phones receive several embarrassing photos of Zhu Nian with another guy. These photos also appear on Ming's phone, and Zhu Nian sees them too. She says, I didn't do any of this. The reporters start questioning Ming, but he ignores them and takes Zhu Nian away. Zhu Nian's stepmother and stepsister are overjoyed, thinking that Ming will now leave her. Meanwhile, Zhu Nian says, I am innocent, and the photos have been photoshopped. Ming responds, I trust you, and I will help you. Ming calls his assistant and says, find out the truth behind these pictures from the technology department of the company. The assistant asks, why do you care so much about this girl? You should go before the media, say that you had no idea about this affair, clear your name, and break off this relationship. Ming remains silent. On the other hand, Zhu Nian overhears this and starts leaving, crying. Ming asks her, where are you going? Zhu Nian replies, I will prove my innocence myself. Ming stops her and says, I will help you. He then orders his assistant, prove Zhu Nian innocent as quickly as possible. In the next scene, all the reporters are asking questions to Miss Li. Miss Li says, Zhu Nian is my stepdaughter and I know her well. She is like this. She has had many affairs. We didn't even know about her engagement. Just then Ming arrives and says, you should be ashamed. What kind of mother are you? And how can you say such things about my fiancé? He shows everyone a laptop and says, our company's technology department has researched this. All these pictures have been photoshopped. He also provides evidence to support this. Despite this, the reporters remain unconvinced and say, Ming must be protecting Zhu Nian. There must be something going on. Miss Li then tells her daughter, I thought Ming would calm down after hearing these rumors, but that didn't happen. I underestimated that shameless girl. Just then, a housekeeper arrives and stops Miss Li, saying, you're Miss Li, aren't you? In the next scene, Ming goes to Zhu Nian and says, now don't stress. I've cleared your name in front of the media. Zhu Nian shows him a heart sign in response. Ming replies, don't misunderstand this. I don't care about you. I only did this so you don't think I'm a heartless person. And for all this, I'm deducting 50 points from you because you caused me a lot of trouble and wasted my time. Zhu Nian thinks to herself, I'm back to 0 points again. In the next scene, the housekeeper tells Miss Li, now that you've married Mr. Xu, you must fulfill your promise. Zhu Nian overhears this conversation as well. Miss Li responds, I've already given you everything. Don't be too greedy now. The housekeeper says, If I hadn't helped you back then, you would have never been able to marry Mr. Xu. Just then, Ming's assistant arrives and says to Xu Nian, I've found your purse, and hands it over to her. Xu Nian then asks him, can you introduce me to the housekeeper here? The assistant shows her the housekeeper on CCTV and provides details about her. It is revealed that the housekeeper was hired temporarily, and her name is Ji Lan. After this, Xu Nian recalls that Ji Lan used to be her mother's caretaker. When she was young, Ji Lan would give her mother medicines and take care of her. But after her mother's death, her father fired Ji Lan. Xu Nian thinks, why does all of this seem connected? Did my stepmother kill my mother? She decides, I need to go home to prove all of this. She then types to Ming's assistant, can you ask Ming to give me a few days off? I'll be back in 3 to 4 days. I'm going to my home. Ming notices Xu Nian leaving. The assistant bids her goodbye and informs Ming she has taken leave to go home. Ming says, her family doesn't even like her. She was trying to avoid them. Why would she go back now? At that moment, his assistant informs him, she was investigating someone. She even asked me to arrange a meeting with some staff member. Then she went home, looking very stressed. If you're worried about her, I can send someone to follow Xu Nian and find out. Ming says, no. On the other hand, when Xu Nian goes home, her stepsister asks her, what are you doing here? Xu Nian replies, why should I tell you? And this is my dad's house. Her stepsister responds, Dad considers only me as his daughter. Just then, their dad and mom also arrive. Xu Nian says to her dad, I am back. Her dad rudely says, now you've become the mistress of my competitor. You have no right to call me dad. He walks away. At that moment, Xu Nian's stepsister says to her, maybe you didn't hear. Dad told you to leave this place. Anyway, Dad said I'm his only daughter. Xu Nian replies, don't forget that you're just Dad's stepdaughter, whereas I am his biological daughter. After that, she leaves and says to her dad, when I was a child, we used to go fishing together. But now you hate me and don't even want to listen to me or see me, so I'm leaving. At that moment, her dad says to her, have dinner with us before you leave. At the dinner table, Xu Nian says to her dad, I remember when Mom was sick, she used to write in a diary. Can I see that diary? Her dad says, all our old things are in the storeroom. You can look for it after dinner. On the other hand, Ming says to his assistant, Xu Nian has been gone for a long time. The assistant replies, it's only been half a day since she left. If you're worried about her, I can send someone to find out. Ming says, no, I'm not worried about her. I need to meet her dad and fix everything. On the other side, Miss Li is searching for the diary in the storeroom when Xu Nian arrives there. Miss Li says, you haven't left yet? Xu Nian replies, you killed my mom, didn't you? Miss Li says, why do you think I killed your mom? I only came to see what happened between your mom and dad. Miss Li then takes Xu Nian's bag and says, did you think you could expose me with this pen recorder? After that, she leaves and Xu Nian thinks, I didn't plan to record anything, but I know you're somehow connected to my mom's death. You won't be able to hide from me for much longer. In the next scene, Xu Nian is looking at the moon. At that moment, Ming arrives and says, you're enjoying the view of the moon. Xu Nian says, what are you doing here? Ming replies, I came here for business work, and I'm going to take you with me. At that moment, Xu Nian says to him, I'm not going with you today. After this, Ming calls his assistant and says, I'm not coming home today. Xu Nian thinks, what's wrong with him? If my dad sees him, he'll be very angry. Then Ming says to her, what are you doing here? Let's go now. After that, they both leave. In the next scene, Ming says to Xu Nian's parents, I should have come to meet you much earlier, but I was very busy. Then Xu Nian's stepmother says to him, now that you're here, stay for a night before leaving. Hearing this, Ming agrees, but her dad ignores him and walks away. Xu Nian thinks, what exactly does Ming want? In the next scene, Ming asks Xu Nian, why does your room feel so empty? Xu Nian replies, this is not my room. I live at school. She then types on her phone and asks him, were you worried about me? Ming responds, no, I just came to check if you were dead. And that too without completing my contract. Xu Nian says to him, now go and sleep in some other room. Ming says, no, I'll sleep right here on the bed. As Xu Nian starts to leave, Ming stops her and says, according to our contract, you have to do everything I say, and you can't go anywhere without asking me. Xu Nian replies, the contract doesn't say we have to sleep on the same bed. Ming answers, I didn't ask you to sleep with me. You'll sleep on the floor, and I'll sleep on the bed. After this, Xu Nian leaves the room to get a bedsheet. Then they both lie down to sleep. At that moment, Ming says to her, tell me a joke. Xu Nian thinks, what's wrong with him? Why does he want to hear a joke right now when I can't even speak? At that moment, Xu Nian is pretending to sleep and suddenly sits up, which startles Ming. He asks her, what happened to you? Why did you sit up suddenly? She replies, "You were the one who asked me to tell you a joke." Ming responds, "You remember that after so long?" She says, "Yes, it takes time to think of a joke." Then she starts telling a ghost joke and Ming interrupts her saying, "Enough! I don't want to hear anything else. You're so slow." After that, they return to their respective spots. Junyan then thinks about how her stepmother had said she was connected to a big family and that her daughter was her ex-husband's child. But based on my experience, Dad had two families, and maybe she is his illegitimate daughter. At that moment, Ming sits down beside her. Shunian gets scared seeing him and says, "What are you doing here?" Ming says, "Your ghost story scared me." Shunian replies, "Are you scared of ghosts too? I used to be very scared as well, but after my mom's death, I think she'll protect me. Let me tell you a hack to stop feeling scared. When you're scared, sing loudly." Saying this, she starts singing a weird song. Listening to it, Ming gets irritated and says, "That was such a terrible song." Then Ming says to Shunian, "You sleep on the bed, I'll sleep on the floor." After that, she goes to the bed. The next morning, Ming is watching Shunian sleep and smiling. Then he leaves. As soon as he does, Shunian opens her eyes. In the next scene, Ming says to Shunian's father, "If not today, then tomorrow, you'll end up selling your shares to my company. But by then, I won't offer you the same price I'm offering now." Mr. Shu starts to leave, but Shunian arrives. Mr. Shu says to her, "So this was the reason you came here, and that's why you've been talking to me nicely." After that, Shunian asks Ming, "What is all this about?" Ming says to her, "I spoke to your dad about selling the shares, that's all." To which Shunian responds, "Why did you do this? Now he will think I'm in the wrong. I can't ruin my relationship with my dad." In the next scene, Shunian's dad is fishing when he sprains his back. Shunian arrives to help him. She suggests going to the doctor. Dad says, "No, your mom will give me a massage and I'll be fine." Shunian then explains to him, "You misunderstand. I'm not with Ming. I only want the best for you. You should sell your shares to him because he's offering you more money." In the following scene, Junian brings her dad to meet Ming. Ming tells her dad, "I've added extra money." To this, Junian's dad replies, "I agree with the terms of the agreement, but I have two conditions. You will not fire any employees from my company. They are all long-time employees, and I don't want them to lose their jobs because of me. And the second condition is that you will host a ceremony where I will officially transfer the shares to you." Ming agrees. Mr. Shu is about to sign when his stepmother arrives and says to him, "Don't do this. This company was built with great effort. You cannot sell it. Shunian came here with this very motive." At this, the dad scolds her, saying, "I know what I am doing," and asks her to leave. He then signs the documents. In the next scene, Ming is having breakfast. Shunian arrives. Ming asks her, "Where are you staying?" She leaves without answering. In the following scene, Ming is learning sign language. Shunian arrives, picks up her phone, and leaves again. Ming then asks his assistant, "Do you know where Junian is staying these days?" She leaves home early and comes back late at night. In the next scene, Shunian is leaving the house. Ming asks her, "Where are you going so late at night?" But Shunian doesn't say anything and leaves. Ming starts following her. Then we see Shunian meeting a boy. The boy tells her, "The information about the person you asked me to provide will take a lot of effort. That's why I will charge double the fee." Hearing this, Shunian says she cannot afford such a fee. Meanwhile, Ming observes everything. He takes a picture of the boy, sends it to his assistant, and says, "Find out about him quickly." In the next scene, Ming's assistant tells him, "No information about him has been found yet." Ming replies, "Find it quickly." In the following scene, Shunian is somewhere, and Zhao spots her. He grabs her and says, "You escaped me twice, but this time you won't." He tries to force her into his car. Just then, Ming arrives, pulls Zhao out of the car, and starts beating him. Ming angrily says, "If I see you again, I will beat you up." After saying this, Ming goes to Shunian and asks, "Are you okay?" Shunian sits crying in the alley. Seeing this, Ming feels very bad. He picks her up and takes her home. After reaching home, Ming asks Shunian, "Did you hurt your back? Let me see." Shunian refuses, but Ming says, "I won't do anything. Let me see if you are seriously injured. I'll apply medicine for you, or we'll go to the doctor." Hearing this, Shunian agrees. Ming applies medicine to her back and says, "What were you doing there at that time? What would I have done if something had happened to you? You know, only bad people go there. If I hadn't reached there in time, I can't even imagine what could have happened to you." Hearing this, Shunian asks to him, "What were you doing there?" Ming says, "What are you saying? I don't understand." Shunian comes closer to him and starts typing on her phone, but Ming becomes nervous and faints. Shunian thinks, "What happened to him? It seems he used too much energy to lift me. He's so weak. I'll make something good for you to eat." In the next scene, Ming regains consciousness. He sees Shunian cooking and feels very impressed, smiling. Shunian serves him the food and says, "I made this soup especially for you. It's very healthy because you're so weak and need a lot of energy." Then Ming gets a call from his assistant, who tells him, the man Shunian met is a private detective. Shunian asked him to investigate her stepmother, but his fees were too high, which Shunian couldn't pay, so he refused to proceed with the investigation. Ming says, "Tell him to continue the investigation. I'll pay." Then Shunian receives a message from the detective saying, "I've found the details of the person you asked about." Hearing this, Shunian becomes very happy and thanks him. In the next scene, Ming asks Shunian, "Where are you going?" Shunian replies, "I'm going with you to the ceremony." Ming says, "I thought you wouldn't come because I'm taking your family's shares." Shunian responds, "Dad said the ceremony would be a big event, so I'll come with you too." Ming then asks, "Why do you have a dress in your hand?" She replies, "It's mine. I'll change there." Then Ming and Shunian arrive at the party. Shunian approaches her stepmother and apologizes, saying, "I said a lot of things to you in anger that day, for which I want to apologize to you in front of everyone." Miss Lee pretends in front of everyone that she loves Shunian very much. At that moment, Shunian spills wine on her, apologizes, and says, "This dress was specially made for me by Ming. You should wear it." Then she leaves with Shunian. When she sees the dress, it is a short dress, and she is shocked. Shunian then says to her, "Does this dress remind you of anything? Let me tell you one more thing. The owner of this dress is also named Miss Lee." Miss Lee then asks, "What do you want?" Shunian replies, "I know you were a hostess and not from a noble family. Your daughter is also my father's biological daughter, because even before your marriage, you spent the night with my dad, and my dad never left my mom for you." Meanwhile, Mr. Shu is giving a speech. Suddenly, on the LCD screen, Miss Lee and Shu Nian appear. Miss Lee tells Shu Nian, "Yes, I was a hostess, and it was your dad who hid my identity. He was crazy about me, begging me to accept his love." The two begin fighting, and Miss Lee starts strangling Shu Nian, saying, "I'll have to send you to the same place as your mother." After that, Shu Nian's dad orders the LCD to be turned off. He approaches his wife and says, "What is going on here?" Then he asks Miss Lee, "What were you saying just now?" Miss Lee pretends to act innocent. When Shunian's dad realizes that this was Shunian's plan to expose her stepmother in front of everyone, he becomes furious. Shunian knows that her dad cares about nothing but his reputation. At that moment, Miss Lee tries to slap her, but Ming grabs her hand. He says to Shunian's father, "After reviewing the company's bank statements, I discovered, perhaps you don't know, but your wife has transferred a significant amount of funds to foreign accounts and has also claimed some shares in her name." He then asks his wife, "What were you lacking that made you do all this to me?" To this, she pretends to act innocent. After this, he leaves, saying, "I'll go outside to attend to my guests, and I won't offer any explanations about you. Save your own dignity." Just then, Shunian's stepmother starts hitting her, but Ming intervenes and pulls her away from Shunian. Following this, her daughter becomes enraged. She grabs a knife and rushes toward Shunian to attack her, saying, "I won't spare you. This is all happening because of you." But at that moment, Ming steps in. He gets a small cut on his hand and faints at the sight of blood. Seeing this, both the mother and daughter become terrified. In the next scene, Shunian asks Ming's assistant, "Why does he faint so easily?" The assistant explains, "Mr. Ming has blood phobia. He cannot tolerate the sight of blood and avoids getting too close to anyone." A flashback is then shown, where Ming, as a child, sees a crowd of people standing outside their house demanding money from his father. At the same time, a dead body falls from the building. Ming wakes up in a panic and hugs Shunian tightly. At that moment, a close-up shot of the two is shown, which is quite romantic. Later, Shunian's father comes to meet her and informs her, "My daughter has been arrested by the police for attacking Ming with a knife. Please get Ming to sign these papers. I am begging you." Shunian tells her dad, "I will get the papers signed if you agree to my 2 conditions. First, divorce your wife. Second, transfer all your property in my name. Once you bring the documents, I will also ensure Ming signs the settlement papers." Her dad agrees and leaves. In the next scene, Mr. Shu tells his wife, "We need to get divorced." She starts crying and says, "I don't want this. Don't leave me." To this, he explains, "Once our daughter is saved from going to jail and the settlement papers are signed by Ming, we can live as we wish. But for now, we need to divorce." In the next scene, Ming signs the settlement papers and says, "Now I want something too." To this, Shunian says, "I will do anything for you." Ming then moves closer to her, making Shunian nervous, but he starts laughing and says, "Stop pretending to be scared now. I am learning sign language, and from now on, we will only communicate in sign language. Afterward, Xu Nian is about to take the papers to her dad. Meanwhile, Ming is practicing sign language and asks her, "Are you going alone?" He adds, "Reply to me in sign language only." Xu Nian explains to him and Ming says, "You are going too fast. I can't understand." Then, he looks into a book and says, "Are you saying this is a family matter and I shouldn't interfere? Fine. You can go alone." In the next scene, Xu Nian goes to her house. Her dad says to her, "Here are the divorce papers and documents that you needed." Seeing Miss Li, she asks, "What is she still doing here?" and says, "Get her out of here." Then Xu Nian starts to leave. Her stepmom stops her, crying, and says, "This is about my daughter's future. Please give us the settlement papers." Xu Nian pushes her away and says, "Did you ever pity my mom? After what you did to her, I can never wish anything good for you." Her dad then says to her, "You've gone mad. Your mom committed suicide." Xu Nian replies, "No, she killed my mom." At that moment, Ming's assistant arrives with the housekeeper and says, "Mr. Ming sent her here." The housekeeper then tells Xu Nian's dad the whole truth. "Miss Li bribed me and made me switch the medicines. She also forced your ex-wife to end her life." After hearing this, Mr. Xu pushes Miss Li and says, "I could never have imagined you could do all this. We can no longer live together. Anyway, our divorce is already finalized." In the next scene, Xu Nian is standing on the terrace, drinking and reminiscing about her mother. Just then, Ming arrives and assumes she is about to end her life. He shouts at her, "Don't do it!" Xu Nian is crying and screams, "Mom!" Ming picks her up, hugs her, and she faints. He carries her away from there. The next morning, when Xu Nian wakes up, her dress has been changed. She looks at her dress in surprise and then at Ming, who is sleeping nearby. When she wakes him up, Ming says to her, "Last night you were very drunk, and when I brought you here, after that you wouldn't let go of my hand and kept saying all sorts of things all night." Xu Nian asks, "Did I speak?" Ming replies, "You talked all night." Overjoyed, she hugs Ming, but he pushes her away. She starts jumping on the bed and dancing happily, realizing that she can talk. Ming then says to her, "Stop yelling, let's practice speaking so you can talk properly in front of everyone." After this, they both go to Ming's grandfather's birthday celebration. Ming and Xu Nian wish him together. Seeing Xu Nian speak, the grandfather is surprised and asks, "Can you talk?" Xu Nian replies, "Yes." The grandfather then says to Ming, "Now you no longer need this girl. The purpose for which you got engaged to her is fulfilled. Now you should break up with her and think about marrying someone else." Ming makes an excuse in response. In the next scene, Ming's grandfather is cutting the cake and asks Xu Nian to eat it. But Xu Nian says, "I'm allergic to cake. If I eat it, I'll get rashes." Hearing this, the grandfather is a bit surprised. Then his assistant says to him, "Don't you find it strange that Xu Nian, like Mr. Hong, is also allergic to cake?" To this, the grandfather replies, "Yes, I was quite shocked to see that too." Afterward, he instructs a DNA test for Xu Nian and says, "No one should know about this." However, Hong overhears everything. In the next scene, Ming and Xu Nian are in the car. Xu Nian says, "Our contract is now complete." Ming replies, "Yes, tomorrow I'll give you the breakup papers." Both of them then spend the entire night thinking about how to stop each other. Xu Nian thinks, "I've been with Ming for so many days, but maybe he doesn't like me at all. He never even tried to stop me." On the other hand, Ming thinks, "Now I don't have a solid reason to stop her. The problems caused by her stepmom have been resolved, and now she can live comfortably in that house." Morning comes, and Ming is waiting for Xu Nian. When Xu Nian comes downstairs, Ming pretends as if it doesn't matter to him. Then Xu Nian says, "Today we'll break up." Ming says, "Yes," and hands her the documents. Ming says, "When I was gathering details about your mother, I found something suspicious. You can see for yourself. I've included all the details and photos in these documents." Xu Nian learns that the photos of her mother, which led to her suicide, were taken by Hong. Realizing this, Xu Nian thinks, "I can only take revenge on Hong with Ming's help." Xu Nian says to Ming, "I don't want to break up right now." Hearing this, Ming becomes very happy because this was his plan all along. Then Xu Nian says, "You don't want to marry that girl either." Ming replies, "No, I'll marry her. She's not that bad. I have no problem." Xu Nian says, "But you don't love her. Until you find someone you truly love, we'll continue to stay as a couple." Hearing this, Ming is extremely happy, but acts normal in front of Xu Nian and says, "All right." In the next scene, the grandfather's assistant brings him the DNA test reports, revealing that Xu Nian is his granddaughter. He is very happy to see this. He then goes to meet Ming and Xunian and asks Ming, "Why haven't you broken up yet?" Ming replies, "You've made all the decisions in my life so far, but I want to make this decision myself." He adds, "Xunian and I were initially in a deal, but now we love each other." The grandfather then asks, "Can you leave everything for her?" Ming says, "Yes." The grandfather responds, "Now that you've made your decision, what can I say?" Hearing this, Ming is very shocked and asks, "Have you really accepted our relationship?" The grandfather says, "I'm not so old that I can't understand your desires." As he leaves, he says to Xunian, "From now on, call me grandfather." Hearing this, Xunian becomes very happy. In the next scene, Xunian is thinking about Ming's words, how he said they were initially in a deal but now truly want to be together. Xunian thinks, "I know that was a lie, but there was truth in his words. Does Ming also feel something for me just as I feel for him?" She then comes to her senses and says, "What am I even thinking? I need to focus on my goal. I just have to clear my mother's name." In the next scene, Grandpa calls Ming over and gives him a marriage agreement. Seeing it, Ming is shocked and says, "I cannot get married right now." Grandpa says, "Fine. If not next week, then let's fix a date for you and Xunian's wedding next month." Ming says, "No, that can't happen because my illness hasn't been cured yet, and I can't get married with this illness." Grandpa replies, "This is just a psychological issue. It will get better soon. I'll talk to a doctor today itself." In the next scene, the doctor asks Ming, "Can you shake hands?" But Ming is unable to touch the doctor's hand. Just then, Xunian arrives. The doctor asks her, "Are you two planning to get married?" She says, "Yes." The doctor says to her, "I'd like to speak to you in private." After this, Ming leaves. The doctor says to Xunian, "Ming's illness can only be cured by changes in the people around him. Otherwise, it will affect your romance as well, and it will worsen to the point where Ming won't be able to touch anyone at all." Hearing this, Xunian decides, "I will now definitely help Ming because Ming has always helped me." She says, "Now it's my turn." On the other hand, Ming is thinking, "The doctor is mine, but what is he talking about with Xunian?" He goes to Xunian and asks, "Where did the doctor go?" Xunian says, "He left." Hearing this, Ming says, "Maybe he felt that I can never get better. That's why he left." He then says, "Now what will happen? Does this mean I'm going to die now?" He lies down on the couch, starts crying and says, "Now what will happen? I'm not even married yet. I don't want to die so soon and I don't even have kids yet." At that moment, Xunian silences him and says, "You'll get married, and you'll have kids too." Immediately, Ming sits up and says, "I was just joking." Then Xunian moves closer to him, getting very close. Ming closes his eyes. Suddenly, Xunian steps back and becomes happy because Ming didn't faint. She says to him, "Your doctor told me to stay in as much physical contact with you as possible. This increases the chances of your recovery significantly." Ming responds, "Oh, I thought you were trying to do something wrong with me." Xunian replies, "What are you thinking?" Then she adds, "Now you tell me, how did you feel when I got that close to you?" Ming doesn't answer. The next morning at the breakfast table, Xunian asks him the same question again. Ming quietly starts eating. Seeing this, Xunian angrily says, "Forget eating and answer me." Ming then says, "I felt really good when you got that close to me." Xunian replies, "All right, then from now on, I'll go to the office with you too." Ming says, "But there will be a lot of people there. What will they think?" Xunian responds, "Yes, but I'm your fiancé and I can stay close to you." Afterward, at the office, she keeps holding Ming's hand while he works. Ming tries to free his hand once, but Xunian doesn't let go. Finally, Ming says, "Let me go to the bathroom," and only then does Xunian release his hand. In the next scene, Xunian receives a call from the doctor who tells her, "You're doing very well. Spend more time with him and be romantic with him. This is excellent therapy for him." Afterward, Xunian plans a movie night and tells Ming, "Tonight we'll watch a romantic movie." However, they end up watching a horror movie. Ming, scared, says, "This is a horror movie." Xunian replies, "I used to be scared too and couldn't express my feelings." Ming says, "Stop giving your lecture in the middle of the movie. At least respect the horror movie. If you wanted to lecture, why even put on a movie? This is the last movie I'm watching with you." Then Xunian pretends to be scared so that Ming would touch her, and that's exactly what happens. Ming hugs her and says, "This is all fake. Don't be scared." Suddenly, the lights go out. Both of them get scared and hug each other. Then Ming says, "If you hadn't put on the horror movie, the lights wouldn't have gone out. Now I'll call an electrician." Xunian says, "Can't you fix the electricity yourself? Why call someone?" He responds, "I don't know how." She says, "What about your wife and kids then? Poor things will always live in the dark." Both of them then head to fix the electricity. Suddenly, Xunian, scared, says, "I saw something here." Afterward, she falls on Ming, and accidentally, they kiss. She immediately gets up and says, "I'm going to sleep." In the next scene, Ming is extremely happy, and on the other hand, Shunian is smiling too. The next day, Shunian is talking to someone on the phone and says, "Yes, I've come outside." Suddenly, some people arrive and forcibly take her away. Meanwhile, Ming is buying a diamond ring. Just then, he gets a call from Shunian's phone, but it's from Miss Lee. She says, "I'm out of town. If you want to save Shunian, come alone. If you bring anyone else, you won't find Shunian, only her body." Hearing this, Ming runs to the location. In the next scene, Shunian's stepmother takes her to the rooftop. Just then, Ming arrives and says, "Let Shunian go. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you." She responds, "I don't want anything, but this girl doesn't deserve to live. Just like her mother, she deserves to die." Then she pushes Shunian. Ming immediately grabs her hand. Shunian, panicked, says, "Please don't let go of my hand. I don't want to die yet." At the same time, Miss Lee stands aside, laughing, and says, "Maybe both of you should die together." But just then, Ming's bodyguards arrive and capture Miss Lee. At the same moment, Ming pulls Shunian up and hugs her. Shunian says to him, "You're bleeding." Ming replies, "Do you know what I'm most afraid of? Losing you." Shunian, "I'll spend my whole life proving that no one can love you more than I do." He then gives her a diamond ring and proposes to her. Shunian says, "In this situation, when someone's life is being saved, how can you propose?" Despite this, Ming puts the ring on her finger, and the two return home. In the next scene, Hong says, "Ming has only one weakness, and that's Shunian." Then, in the following scene, Ming is shown waiting for Shunian. She arrives wearing a wedding dress and looks stunning. Shunian asks him, "How do I look?" Ming replies, "This is a serious problem. I only want to see you in this dress alone. I don't want anyone else to lay eyes on you because you look too beautiful." Saying this, he tries to kiss her. Shunian stops him, saying, "Someone will come." Ming responds, "Your dress is getting ruined," and starts adjusting it. Just then, something pricks his hand, and he pretends to faint. Seeing him act this way, Shunian becomes worried and holds him. Suddenly, Ming kisses her. Shunian says, "You're so bad. I was really scared." Then Ming and Shunian kiss each other. Ming says, "I hope our wedding happens soon because I'm so excited to see you as my bride." In the next scene, Hong arrives at Ming's house. Shunian asks him, "Why are you here?" Hong replies, "I've brought some documents for you. These are DNA reports that clearly state that you are my brother, Hong Shi's daughter." Shunian says, "What do you think? You can make me crazy? I will never trust you." He then shows her pictures of her mother's affair and says, "These pictures were taken by me. After this, my father made sure that they broke up. Then your mother married Mr. Shu." Upon hearing this, Shunian thinks, "My mother wasn't innocent either." Hong then says, "You are very unlucky to fall in love with your own brother. Be thankful that I told you the truth before the wedding. Otherwise, what would you have done?" After this, Shunian runs away and calls Ming. She says, "I need to talk to you urgently." Ming replies, "Yes, tell me, what is it?" She says, "Meet me at your house. I'm waiting for you." Shunian then goes to her father and asks him, "Am I not your daughter?" Her father says, "What are you asking?" Shunian says, "I request you, please tell me everything honestly. My whole life depends on it." Her father replies, "Your mother was having an affair with someone. I didn't want you to be upset." On the other hand, Ming comes home and starts calling for Shunian, but she doesn't come. He searches the entire house for her. Then, Hong tells him, "She's gone because she found out that she's a part of our family. She couldn't tolerate it and left." Then he says, "These are the DNA reports that Grandpa had done. They say Shunian is my brother's daughter, but still, my father wants to marry you both. This means you are not my brother's biological son." Hong continues, "You wouldn't have found out about this if you didn't love Shunian." Ming then asks, "What do you want?" Hong replies, "Just resign from the CEO position and leave the country. Stay happy with Shunian. Otherwise, I'll tell everyone that you're marrying your sister. And you shouldn't forget why Shunian's mother committed suicide." After this, Shunian goes to her mother's grave and cries, saying, "Mother, I love you so much. I had only one dream since childhood, that after your death, I would clear your name, and I tried to do that, but I lost my way, and now what should I do? I love my brother." Just then, Ming arrives looking for her, and he hears these words. Seeing Shunian crying, he also starts crying and leaves from there. The next day, Shunian comes home and ignores Ming, going to her room and starting to pack her things to leave. Ming tries to stop her, but she ignores him and continues to leave. Then Ming grabs her and hugs her. Shunian starts crying and says, "Let me go. I can't stay with you anymore because we are brother and sister. Now we can't marry." Ming says, "No, we are not brother and sister. Hong Shi is not my real father. I was adopted by Grandpa." Shunian then says, But still, I can't be part of that family. I know you've worked so hard to get here, and I don't want you to give up everything because of me. Ming says, won't you listen to my story? My mother died giving birth to me. My father raised me alone and started a factory. But then Hongxi deceitfully took our factory. Because of this, my father fell into depression and committed suicide. A few days later, Hongxi died in an accident, and Grandpa adopted me. I'm here for revenge, and that is my purpose. After this, Xunian says, I'm with you, but if I help you, I'll have to join your family as your sister. Will you accept that? Ming agrees. Xunian then starts crying and says, my parents left me, and now you've left me too. And she leaves. Ming sits down and starts crying. The next day, Xunian is on her way when she twists her ankle and faints. The principal of her mother's school sees her and takes her there. The principal then says, this diary was kept by your mother with me for safekeeping. Xunian reads the diary and it says, I met Hongzi after 10 years because my husband wanted him to invest in our company, so I met him in a hotel room to talk, and he couldn't control himself when he saw me, maybe because he had been drinking. When he started coming towards me, I got very angry and slapped him. Then, 2 days later, Hong Shui came to apologize, and he told me that his brother had spiked his food with drugs, which is why he behaved like that. I forgave him, but by then our scandal had already spread, but nothing happened between us that night. Xunian, you must be grown now. Don't misunderstand your mother. After reading this, Xunian thinks, sorry, mother, I misunderstood you. I was blind in love, but now I will focus on my purpose. And she starts thinking. On the other hand, Grandpa tells Ming, if you're breaking up with Xunian, then you must marry the girl I suggest. After this, Ming is about to make an announcement at a conference when Xunian arrives there in a wedding dress and says, all the rumors about our relationship are fake. We are together, and we are going to get married soon because I am pregnant. Upon hearing this, Hong says to his father, I promised you I wouldn't tell anyone, but now that Xunian is pregnant, I have to tell everyone that Xunian is my brother Hongxi's daughter, and they are brother and sister. The reporters are shocked and say, how is it possible that they are brother and sister, and they are getting married and in a relationship? Grandpa then explains to everyone, Ming is not Hongxi's biological son. Since it was revealed to the press that Ming is not Hongxi's biological son, Grandpa and everyone decide that Xunian should be made the CEO of the company because she is actually Hongxi's daughter. At this point, Hong realizes everything has turned upside down. He then says, no, I changed Xunian's DNA reports so that these two would break up and I could become the CEO. Dad, why can't you see me? To this, Grandpa says, you are not worthy of being the CEO. How dare you lie? But then Ming tells everyone, no, this is not a lie. It's the truth. Xunian is Hongxi's daughter and says, I found this out long ago, but I kept it hidden from you all for my own reasons. After this, Xunian arrives with her mother's diary and reveals the truth to everyone about how Hong gave drugs to Hongxi and then had pictures taken of Xunian's mother, creating a scandal between the two. Grandpa gets very angry at Hong and disowns him from his property. The next day, when Xunian goes to her mother's school, a teacher tells her that someone has vandalized her mother's grave. She runs there, and Ming has done a beautiful decoration, leaving a note that says, I love you so much, Xunian. I want to give you every happiness in the world. Just give me one more chance, and I will prove to you that you didn't make the wrong decision. Xunian is very happy after reading this and starts looking for Ming. Just then, he appears behind her. She says, you wrote such romantic things. What will my mother think? He replies, all these promises I made to your mother that I would always take care of you, and your mother is a witness to our love. Then he says, will you marry me? We will be very happy together, like a strong and happy family. Xunian then says, okay, fine. Let's make a contract for a lifetime, and starts laughing. Ming then kneels down and puts a ring on her finger. They embrace each other and take their mother's blessings. Ming tells her mother, I will always take care of your daughter. I will never let her be sad. Xunian laughs and thinks, well, in the end, I have found the strong family I always dreamed of. Ming holds her hand and both are very happy. After this, the story ends with a happy ending. How much rating would you give this drama, and which was your favorite scene? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the videos.